So my name is Walz, and my presentation is More Than Meets the Ear, Connecting Future Cadets to Band. Before I start, I want to say thank you to Mr. Spencer, my mentor. Just his expertise in doing projects like this before really helped me to create a product that is just the best that it could be. I also want to thank Mrs. Porath for giving invaluable input on just what the band needs and what would be best for the program for this video. Also, just all the other music directors I've had over my life and my family for just instilling the love of music in me that motivated me to do this project. So, heard the title, but that doesn't really explain what the project is. So what is the project? Well, if my clicker works, oh, it would help if I turned it on. There we go. So what's the project? Well, it's a band promotional video. And I wanted to do that because it connected two passions of mine, music and video. So a bit of background on that. I started music with piano in kindergarten. My grandma, who's here tonight, taught me piano lessons for that. So that's where it all started. And then I joined band in 5th grade, playing percussion. And since then, it just took off music for me. I'll take all the music I can get, really, at this point. And so it's just a huge part of who I am right now. Video productions, I didn't start really any of that until high school, but I took the freshman video class and I just really enjoyed it. It was cool to see the filming process to editing and just putting together this final product that told a story, really. And so that really appealed to me. And then during the COVID lockdown last spring, I had the opportunity to help out with the church services that were online because we couldn't meet in person. And so I helped out with the music side of that too, but my biggest role was with the video, putting together all the sermon, the liturgy, the slides, the music, all of those things put together in this hour-long video every week for like 3 months. And so I got way better at editing, just the process and all of that, just learning about those things working with the church. And so that was a huge experience and part of what inspired me to do this project as well. So you can say, band promotional video, but what does that really mean? What does that entail? So we had to narrow it down right away from the beginning. And one of the first things we decided was the audience. And we chose 8th graders because we have people, 4th, 5th grade joining band at pretty good numbers, but a lot of them quit band going to high school just because they want to do other things or focus on other things, or just they don't feel like doing band anymore. And so my job is to make them still feel like doing band because it's cool. And yeah, so then we also wanted to keep the video pretty short to help maintain interest. Think about like an 8th grader, they're not going to sit through a half-hour-long video about why band is cool. That would get kind of boring. So kept it pretty short to help keep the interest with that going. And so in just a basic promotional video, you've got 2 main elements, and that would be interviews and B-roll. And so that's it's maybe a little bit hard to see on the main screen here, but the left picture is like the interview, the student is talking about band, maybe telling a story, something like that. But, and then B-roll is a shot that's not the interview, basically. So anything, like a shot of them playing music, hanging out with band friends or something like that. And the point of B-roll is to help keep the interest going, really. If you just had a video of a person talking, your eyes get bored, and they don't want to sit here watching this video anymore. And so you throw in some B-roll, add some interest there. It also helps hide cuts in the video, because you usually need to do that with an interviewer or interviewee. If there's a long pause, or maybe you don't want this sentence, you have to make a cut, but then it's really obvious when you make a cut, because maybe they're over here talking, and then all of a sudden they're over here, and that's really obvious and distracting. And so you can put the B-roll over that cut then and help hide that. And so that's why B-roll is there. And you need a lot more B-roll than you think. Like, if you think you need an hour of B-roll, you probably need like 5 hours. It's for a 4-minute video. So, because once you use a shot once, it looks weird if you use it again. So, you have to keep that varied. And so, with that in mind, I started shooting B-roll right away for the marching band because I knew that time was limited. You know, the season's only in the fall. And yeah, so I needed a lot of B-roll, needed a marching band, so I did that right away. But then ran into an obstacle, and surprise, surprise, it's the same obstacle we've been dealing with for over a year now. That would be COVID, obviously. You know, I had the idea for the project before the pandemic hit, but so I was thinking a little bit about how it might affect you know, what I was able to film and stuff like that. But I didn't really think about how it would affect me personally. And then it hit me when I was quarantined, and then the school went out for 2 weeks, and then all of a sudden it's Christmas break, and all I have is some footage of the marching band, and that's it. So that was a shocker for me, for sure, and definitely a huge setback. But worked through that, was able to get started again after Christmas break, and that ended up being all good. So, yeah. Okay, so then I went on to interviews. And the most important thing about the interviews is that you don't want it to be boring because, I mean, obviously you don't want it to be boring. And so I had to think from a perspective of an 8th grader, because that's who's watching these videos, you know, what would be interesting to me as an 8th grader? And I realized, you know, it's important that, you know, the band goes to ISMA and gets gold and all of these things, but that isn't interesting to me as an 8th grader. You know, I want to hear about, like, how band is fun and interesting and, like, you know, how it impacts my daily life. And so I focus on less details about the program and their interviews, and really try to just get like feelings, experiences, stories about what the band means to the students, and focused on 3 main things: community, music, and faith. Community being like, you know, friends that you make in band, or, you know, like actual community experiences around Fort Wayne or something like that. Music just being the music that we play and how it's like at a high level and interesting songs. And then obviously faith, just how it helps somebody grow in their faith over the course of the years. And so I only interviewed students, and I did that to connect better with the audience because like, you know, Mrs. Porath, directors, alumni, they all have great things to say about the band, obviously, but I wanted to keep it to students because, I mean, even like starting right now, these 8th graders probably know some of these students, and so it's cool to see like, hey, I know this person, I respect this person, and they're saying band is really cool, and so that's going to make them want to join band. But even like down the line when maybe they don't know the students as much, they're still going to be saying like, these are the actual students who are in band, saying about how good it is, and that I think is going to be more connection there. A little bit of technical stuff then. I use a lapel mic for better audio because it just gets up closer to the throat, to the mouth, and picks up more of the talking and less of the background noise. So you can see maybe there, maybe it's better on the side screens. That's what the lapel mic is, and you can see that in the video a little bit. And so then we moved on to probably my favorite part of the process, which is editing. So for the program that I use, this is the more technical side of the thing, I guess. But I'm a technical guy, so that's why I like it. The program I used for this is called DaVinci Resolve, and it's free, but it's like professional level. Well, there's a free version that's studio version, which is like $300, but the studio version has been used on like full-length feature films and stuff like that. So it's like they're really high-quality software. I came across it when I was doing the video work for church last spring during the lockdown, and it's just really powerful, works really well. So I was used to that, and decided to use that for this video too, then naturally. That's a picture of the interface there. You have your effects, you know, preview, video, audio tracks down there, and so on. But I ran into a problem right away here, and that was that the video files from my camera wouldn't import into DaVinci Resolve, which obviously is a problem because then I can't work on them, which isn't good. So I had to do some research about that, and that led me into the mysterious technical void that is video codecs. with acronyms like, oh, that's hard to see. Okay, H.264, ProRes, or DNxHR, or XABC. Just like, what does this all mean? This is so confusing and crazy. So finally, did some research, found a great article and stuff like that. So this is going to get technical. Bear with me. Yell at me if I'm going too deep into this. So you might be familiar with file extensions in different file formats. You've got TXT or DOCX for like a Word document or a text document, JPEG for a picture, .mp4, .mov for a movie. But there's really a lot more to the story than that when you're talking about file formats, especially with video, because that file extension is really just a container for the video codec, and that is how the video and the audio is compressed. And how the storage is compressed there. And you might ask, well, why does it need to be compressed? Well, a normal picture, like decent to high quality picture, might be 2 to 4 megabytes or so. But a video, because it's a video, is going to have anywhere from like 24 to 60 of these pictures per second. And so that adds up really, really fast. Just 10 minutes of uncompressed 1080p footage is more than 67 gigabytes, which if you're at all familiar with computer storage and how that works, that's a lot of storage just for this one 10-minute video. And so the compression takes away information that's probably not necessary, as you're watching the video. Like, for example, it might take a block of similar colors and just turn them into the same color. And you can see that, well, this is an extreme example, but you probably want to look at the side screens for this. You can see, like, there's blocks of these same colors because the compression, they were similar enough that the compression just said, hey, let's make this all the same color. And usually it's not that noticeable, but that picture does a good job of illustrating that. Another example is it might only store the differences in between video frames. And there's a good illustration of that. So the top is what you might expect, and that's what you would see. The flag's sitting there, it's waving a little bit, background's the same. But because the background's the same, compression says, hey, why do we need to store this information here? It's all the same, let's just store the differences between it. And so you've got your first frame that has the whole thing, but then these next frames only show the changes in between the frames. And so you're storing a lot less information there, and so the file size gets a lot smaller. So my issue was just simply the video codec that the camera shot in couldn't be imported into Resolve, and it's one of the few limitations of the free program. And so I needed to transcode those files into a different video codec, and so I needed to decide what I should use. I needed something that didn't compress it too much, because like that last picture, that's really doesn't look very good, and especially if you're editing it and changing it further, that can make it look really not good. So I needed something that wouldn't compress it too much, and for editing it, I wanted something that would store each full frame. So there's that picture again, and that's great for playback, because you're just watching it in a line from start to beginning, and so it only needs to know the differences between each frame. But if you start at frame 3, on this bottom row and go to frame 1, because you might have to rewind a little bit while you're editing to get that cut in the right place or whatever. And so if you have to go from frame 3 to frame 1, that takes up a lot of extra computing power that's just not necessary at all. And so you want a file format that stores those full images. And so I settled on DNxHR_HQX, which is another acronym that doesn't mean anything. Well, it does mean anything, but it does. And so that's a really common editing codec for those reasons. It doesn't compress too much. It stores each full frame. So that's great for editing. Downside is that it's really large file size thing. Luckily, I had an extra 2 terabyte hard drive lying around. Just pop that in my computer, and you're good to go. So I can finally move on to actually editing. And so you need a structure. You've got all this not random footage, but footage from a lot of different places, and you need a structure on how to organize that into a video that makes sense. And so I went with intro, and then music, community, and faith, those 3 main topics that I described before. and then an outro. So a pretty basic structure, but it's effective for this video. I had the opportunity to film one of our concerts just like a couple weeks ago, and that was really, really great because I took a bunch of background music from that, just, help set the mood, keep the energy up, and so on. But it was great because then we were using background music that was our own band playing, which makes sense for a band promotional video. And so deeper in, the intro needs to grab attention. You don't want people to stop watching the video after 10 seconds because the intro isn't interesting before they actually get to the bulk of the content. So I use actually the first song from our symphonic set from that concert because, same thing for a concert, you want the first song to be interesting and grab attention. So I used that first song for that and then cut up a bunch of clips, marching band, symphonic band, just those fun, having fun kind of clips. Pretty short to keep it fast-paced and interesting for the intro. And then interview editing, it was pretty much the same. I used a couple of interviews. And that starts with just organizing the clips and figuring out which part of a certain interview you wanted, and then putting that into the editor and then figuring out, okay, I don't need this sentence, I don't need this long pause that they have here, cutting those out. And so you have this cut up interview then, and you need to hide those cuts like I talked about before. Do that with B-roll, put B-roll of that person or just of the band or something like that over the cut in the clip, make it nice and smooth, keep the interest going. And then the outro was pretty similar. I kind of combined it with an interview clip, talking about how we play the doxology after every marching band practice. And then I had a recording of us playing the doxology too, kind of put it in with that, and then I had a shot of the whole band saying Soli Deo Gloria, which is kind of like our band slogan, I guess. And so I put those all together for the outro. And take it. Okay, so the video is all edited together now, but there's a couple other steps that I did to help finish out the process. One of those is color grading. And DaVinci Resolve is really known for its color grading, and so I kind of wanted to use that in the video to use the capabilities of my software. And color grading sounds complicated, and it can be complicated, but it doesn't have to be. It's basically just making sure the colors look good, making sure the white balance is right, making sure the dark parts of the picture are as dark as they can be, making sure the white parts are as light as they can be, increasing the contrast, adding saturation to make the colors pop, and all of that sort of stuff. And that's the color grading screen. You can see the little color wheels down there affect those different ranges of color. We've got some graphs that show you detailed information about what color is in the picture, so you don't have to just rely on looking at the picture itself. And so I didn't do anything drastic for this, but it really made a big difference. So once again, you'll probably want to look at the side screens because they're a bit brighter. But that's a shot from the intro, and it looks pretty good. It's an interesting shot in terms of they're all marching, but in terms of the color, it looks good. It's a nice sunny day outside and all of that. But just with some really basic color grading stuff, it turns into this, which is not a drastic change, but you can notice it just has a warmer feel overall. The contrast is a bit higher. Maybe the colors pop out a little bit more, and it really just helps make the whole presentation a little bit more cohesive, a little bit more professional looking, I guess. And another example here, an inside shot, looks pretty normal, right? But after the color grading, you fix some of the white balance issues. It's not as yellow. The highlights on his face aren't as blown out and sharp. And so, once again, just helps make that cohesive and professional looking. And then finally, I worked with the audio and name cards. And the audio was pretty simple as well. The biggest issue with that is, you just have to balance the dialogue with the background music, making sure the background music isn't too loud so you can hear the dialogue, because if you can't hear the dialogue, then what's the point? You might as well just have a music video. So that's the biggest part about that. And then Also just making sure, I used a couple different songs for the background music, and so making sure that those transitions were smooth. And then that's an example of the name card, just at the lower left, name, grade, instrument. I got the logo from Mrs. Weehee and figured out what font, it is when it's the Concordia Lutheran High School whole thing. Figured out that font to make it look all fancy and Concordia-y and all that. So that turned out good. And then finally, it's just time to export the video. And so I had to choose another video codec for that because you don't want something that's massively huge to be sharing out with everything. Luckily, this one was much easier. I went with H.264, which is super common. If you've watched a video, it's probably in H.264. That's what YouTube uses. That's what basically everywhere uses because it's small and it compresses it, but it's not like much worse in terms of quality, at least perceptive. Obviously, if you were going to go edit that video, then for the reasons I described before, it would maybe look a little bit weird if you were changing the colors a lot or something like that. But if you're just sending it out to be watched, then that's a really good choice. I guess I just said that. Alright, so that's it for the process. My big takeaway, I think, for this is more planning that you can do earlier in the process, the better. And obviously I did plan at the beginning, but it sounds kind of obvious, but like the more you can do with that, the better. It just helps make the video more cohesive. For example, you can have the B-roll match the interview topics, and I was able to do that to a certain extent, but I filmed a lot of the B-roll before I filmed the interviews, and if I'd switched that, if I'd done the interviews first and then the B-roll, I can say like, oh, this person's talking about, I don't know, playing saxophone in jazz band or something like that, and so I can get a shot of them playing saxophone in jazz band and like looking like they enjoyed it or something like that. And that just helps make the video that much more cohesive. So if I was going to do this project again, I would definitely kind of switch that order, plan a little bit more ahead of time, even to the extent of creating a shot-by-shot list of exactly what will go in this video. So it's like, this shot will go in for 2 seconds, and then we're going to cut to this shot, and so on. And obviously you need to have a little bit of stuff filmed before that, but as soon as you can plan something like that, then the editing process goes really smoothly. But there's even more to do with this video. The video I'm going to share with you is about 4 minutes long, and it's the main video of this project for sure, but I can tweak it a little bit if I need to still later. Maybe they want this part to be a bit louder or something like that. I've still got all the files to do that. So I can continue to tweak it as necessary. Hopefully there's not too much of that left though. But what I can do and what I'm planning on doing is I'm going to create smaller clips of the interviews. I interviewed 8 people and I only used 4 interviews, and I didn't use their full interviews. So I have a lot more interview footage to use, and so I can put those together into like smaller clips, 30, 15 seconds or so. So that, the band could, I don't know, post it on Instagram or something, whatever you do with that stuff. I don't have Instagram, so yeah. But, yeah, okay, so do those kind of things. Just give them as many options as possible to use this footage and this project that I've done for them. And then obviously once it's all done and wrapped up, they have full control over it. Mrs. Porath can use it for whatever they want, Concordia Day, just whatever, it's theirs. So, that's about it. I'm really excited to share this with you. Been working on this for a while, and band it means so much to me, and it's really exciting to share something, give something back to the band after they've given me a lot of stuff, and just changed my life, really. So, without further ado, I'm going to shut up. You can watch the video now.
So, you want to join band? Before band, I was kind of alone. I was kept to myself. I was in a small school, but then my whole world was just opened up. It was just so much better for me.
I just moved recently here to Fort Wayne, Indiana this last year, and it was great. Joining the band was one of the best things I did whenever I moved, because I was super nervous. I didn't know if I was gonna make new friends, didn't know how I was gonna meet new teachers and everything. And then whenever I came to school here, it was great as people were super friendly. Everyone that I'm the closest with now were people that I met doing marching band, and I met July before the school year even started, which was nice because when on the first day of school I walked into school, I had a whole bunch of friends that I already knew I could sit with and talk to on the first day of school. It was really great and enjoyable.
My favorite memory from being in band so far has been pep band. Every Friday during basketball season, we get to go out to eat with all of our friends and then come back and play all the really fun music.
We learn our music together, no matter the skill level of each. I know lots of people in the past have kind of struggled with music, and all of us have went back and helped them with that music. Throughout my years, I've known a bunch of people that haven't had much percussion experience at all. And with a lot of hard work in the next 3 weeks, they're able to play their parts pretty well. So I think, in my opinion, that's one of my favorite parts about high school band.
When I was in 8th grade, we were performing in Indy for a Bands of America competition. And after we performed, we would go downtown and hang out at Circle Center Mall. And while we were doing this, this group of people came up to us, and they were from another band, and they had seen our show shirts, and they had seen us performing earlier, and they complimented our show and asked us about it, and we got to explain the word of Christ to them, which is a really cool thing, and it's not something I get to do that often. It's really weird that something like marching band can actually have an impact on people and make people think about God, but it does.
At my old school, I went to a public school, so we were unable to express our faith through our music. But here, right now, we're even playing a song called Joy in All Things, which is really great because it's a great reminder that Jesus is always in my life and he's always here. And even when I'm having a bad day or a down day, I can find joy in all things.
One of my favorite marching band memories was definitely how we played doxology every practice. Every night it felt more emotional, more sympathetic, more meaningful. The message every time we played it, just playing for God and doing everything our best for God, was always present every time we played doxology.